Hey everybody, welcome back to the Future Is Now podcast. I'm with my good friend Ben. Ben, thanks for coming on to the podcast.
What's up,
today.
bro? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So we've been friends for a little bit because you spent some time up here in the Northwest. But for those listening that might not know you, maybe start giving some context of where you're at, where you're leading. You're part of a ministry. So what's going on kind of in your world?
Dude, you were pretty much my principal at one point in a way.
I mean, I was the vice principal.
I was getting called to the
principal.
office often, bro.
Yeah, they say though that the most difficult students turn out to be the most successful in life. So you're kind of you're a testament to that.
Well, hey, honored to be here. Honestly, I think what you're doing is so cool, bro. I'm like the biggest fan of any young person like chasing after a dream. And honestly, it's been cool to watch you do this. And bro, I'm just pumped for what God's gonna do through. I think there's a lot of people that need this kind of content right now. Just Thanks, positive leadership, pushing people forward, which is huge. Yeah. But my name is Ben Graves. I am the youth pastor at Daybreak Church in Carlsbad, California. I started about 6 months ago, which is crazy. And we launched a youth ministry in the middle of COVID, outdoor. But we've been turning up and God's been really good. So it's awesome.
That's awesome. Suffering for the Lord in Carlsbad, just like,
my meetings one-on-one with my boss are usually taking place in the lineup at Cardiff, which is a beach. And like, we'll be talking about work and then a wave will come and I'll be like, hey, 1 second. And I'll just skip over real quick.
Cause you've been there for 6 months, and before that, you were interning at a church up here in the Northwest. Yes. So, how has that transition been for you? Because I mean, it is at least I found this too. There's a point I feel like for young adults where either they're graduating college or they're stepping into a job where all of a sudden they go from learning to leading. And I think I don't know. For me, it was pretty awkward, that transition, because like all of a sudden you're thrust into this position of leadership. And I don't know about you, but for me, it's like, I all of a sudden have responsibility and weight for myself. So how's that been for you, kind of transitioning from, okay, there was a season of learning, and obviously you were in leading capacities when you were still here, but actually literally taking the reins, saying, hey, it's all on you now,
For sure, bro. I had really good advice right around my 19 to 20-year-old time. I was a sophomore in college, second year in our internship program. And someone had told me, it was one of the leaders of my life, was like, prepare now as if you're already in the job you want. Like, begin to live your life now as if you're already living out your dream. And really, it's been cool to watch the moments I took really serious. They were maybe small opportunity as far as what people were seeing, like maybe a smaller stage or a smaller audience or a smaller amount of influence. But I think God really honors when you put your 100% into whatever he's put right in front of you. And for me, what it looked like was like, okay, it's a team of 10 at a youth ministry. You're going to lead them like to help do like welcome team. Right. And it was like, all right, God's like, is Ben going to put everything into these 10 people and lead them well? And I think like I saw it grow over time. And I think now that transition, it was a lot easier because I was able to learn what it was like to serve before I was ever leading. And I think before God can ever give you a vision, you have to first serve one. And I think I was serving a vision for a long time, which was awesome. And it just taught me how to kind of see people in the way God sees people and to lead people and lead meetings, a lot of the practical stuff and a lot of the spiritual stuff as well. But I think like the transition, it was really easy because I had these like 4 years of like preparation of behind the scenes stuff, and not like if I was going to fail, which I did lots of times, there wasn't a big consequence. And it was this really safe place to learn and to grow. But it's cool because it really was like, I think of like the practice, the preseason almost of my life. And then, coming down here and now being in the role I'm in the position I'm in, it's like, all right, it's game time, like strap up, like let's go. And I feel totally prepared because of those 4 years.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think that's a good point for you to make, in that, you're always preparing for something. And, I think sometimes we can think of a calling on our lives as like, okay, we qualify for the calling and then God places it on us. But in actuality, we may discover our calling year 18, 19, 20 of our life, but it's always been there. So to operate in the way, like, and live your life in the way that if you're called to be a pastor, if you're called to be a writer, a business person, to understand that it's not like, okay, I graduated, now I'm stepping into that calling, but it's more like God slowly promotes you through obedience.
Totally. And I think it's true in any sphere. whether it's in business. I'm watching my younger brother right now,
Mm-hmm.
who's in a band. And it's funny because like he was for a whole entire 2 years, like just making music in his living room with some
So cool.
buddies. And it's cool because now it's like, they're signed to a label and they're starting to see a little more exposure. But it was like those moments of them, like honestly, go way back to the moments of him playing guitar in a youth ministry when he was 12, has like prepared him to be the full musician that he is today. And I think for my life, it was like a lot of the things of like, man, that one time they pushed me to like talk in front of a crowd and I was nervous and freaked out, like, but I just did it anyways because I felt it was what God wanted me to do, is now like so clutch because now it's like what I have to do every single day. And I feel like, all those seasons, if you can look at it as this is preparing me for what God has next for me, like you're going to find yourself looking at life different, looking at opportunities different. And I've just seen, honestly, a lot of the fruit of my life come from those moments of, hey, I'm just going to take whatever God put in front of me seriously. I'm going to put my best into it, whether there's 10 subscribers or 10,000 subscribers. I'm just going to put my life into it and pray that God's going to bring fruit.
And I think it helps when you are in, and I'm sure you know this too, like when you are in your passion, like it's easy to get stirred up about the small things, like if it's easy to get stirred up about 10 people come to your youth ministry, it's easy to get stirred up about 10 people watching a video when like that's your passion, because individuals matter. I think the problem with a lot of people is when you get stuck into something that you're not supposed to be doing, you're so consumed with production at that point, because that's your only sustenance and that's your only thing that you cling on to for the idea and the feeling of being worthy, rather than, okay, I know that God has called to this. So even if nobody comes to a service, or even if, this isn't coming through, I still know that I'm planted in where God has for me. And that's all the difference, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think it's like in this season is like, I'm just really trying to keep my eyes on what the next step is. And I think oftentimes like leaders in general in any atmosphere will like look to what other people are doing and like, oh, they're killing it there, or they're on that stage, or they're making this kind of money, or they're doing this. And like, it's easy to go like, wait, but I'm here now. I'm definitely not there. Like, how do I grind to get there? When I think it's much more of like, hey, God just wants you to be faithful step by step by step. And if that's the plan he has for you, you're going to walk into it as long as you're walking side by side with him. So I've learned more to like, how do I rely on the Spirit? How do I rely more on my day-to-day walk with Jesus more than trying to produce? And I've noticed the fruit that comes out of that is so much better than anything I could try and do myself.
Yeah, that's good, man. I know a lot to do with like with ministry. A lot of it has to do with momentum, right? Like you gain momentum based off a lot of things. And if there was one momentum killer, I think it was this past year of COVID, because, there were restrictions and then no restrictions and then restrictions again. And, even here, like we just got back into phase 2. So like restaurants are slowly starting to open, but 2 weeks from now, cases might go up and they might take that away. So how has it been for you? I mean, you're in this 6 months, right? So you got thrown into the middle of this in the middle of a pandemic in the world. So has that been hard for you, at least trying to find momentum in that? And how have you kind of shifted in the midst of like that type of pandemic in your ministry?
Sure. I think any season of life, this is by far, I think, the funkiest for all of us. Like, even if you've been around for 60 years or you're a junior higher, like it's just weird. But I'm like, I think you've done this really well as well. Like starting what you started, it's been birthed out of COVID, and for us, it was like, I think we all got hit with this wall, which was COVID-19. And I think the question asked to us was, are we going to continue to persevere and have resiliency and continue to build something? Or are we going to bow down? Or are we just going to roll over, go to sleep, watch Netflix for a couple of years, and then come back when it's all right? And I think what happened with us is like, it gave us an awesome opportunity to start from scratch in a way that we couldn't have if it was in the middle of like a normal season of life. Like we had all the time in the world to meet and give culture. We had all the time in the world to like get the ground roots of what it means to be a youth leader. We had all the ground roots without the pressure of like, we gotta have a weekly service, like, and do all this other stuff. So we had a good season of like, I mean, for probably 2 months, I did nothing but meet with young adults in our city and just pitch them the vision and pitch them what I was trying to accomplish and what I thought God wanted for our youth ministry and get people bought in. And we started at 7 leaders after these meetings, and we had like a team night and invited our church out to it. And there's about 50 there. And we went from like 7 to 45 leaders in one night. We did another one, and it went from 45 leaders to 85 leaders in 2 weeks. And then we launched. And I think the beauty of that really came from us saying, hey, like, I know COVID's a thing. I know we got to be safe. I know we got to be careful, but we're not going to let that stop us from what we feel God's put on our heart. And that's to reach the city. So we just kept moving, and I feel like God's blessed us through it. But man, I think like with anything, if we allow whatever's going on in our life to stop us from the call God put on my life a year ago before COVID, and now is no different.
Right.
It's just like, am I continue to walk or am I going to bow down?
Yeah.
And I think the both of us, like we've just said, like, let's do it, and God's honoring us because of it.
Yeah. It's crazy because I liked what you said kind of how nobody experienced anything like this. And so there was no expectation and there was no social norm to kind of get in alignment with. And so it almost is freeing when there's no pressure like that.
Totally,
and like, who knows because pre-COVID and this isn't just the church world or ministry world, this is businesses. Like, so look about businesses. Pre-COVID, every business, they signed leases, they put people in buildings to work a 9 to 5, whatever. COVID hits, and all of a sudden they're pivoting and they're saying, wait, people can work from home and they're still as effective and they have a better work-life balance. Why haven't we been doing this before? And I think in the same way, like even the church world, like with what you're saying, building leaders and things like that of, wow, okay, now that I wasn't expected to do a weekly service, now that I wasn't expected to do X, Y, and Z from what everybody else has been doing, everybody kind of like sat down and was like, okay, well, what do we want to do? Like, let's like start from zero and strategize. And I think there is so much power in that. And like, the 2008 recession statistically created the most millionaires that we see today. Sure, and so I think that like in leadership in life in general, like obviously there's going to be bumps in the road. Obviously there's going to be trials and there's going to be things that are happening. And I think it's less of like weathering those, but more like, what is this opportunity for myself and what I'm doing? Because there's always going to be opportunity there to find, even in the worst of circumstances. Yeah.
Are you a stocks guy? Like you would be.
I'm getting there. The past year I've been, looking more into it. I do like invest a tiny bit, but yeah.
I was having this conversation with my buddy last night who's like deep in it, has been for the last 5 years.
Dogecoin to the moon, bro.
Dude. The party's taking us to the moon on Elon Musk's plane. It's gonna be awesome. What he was talking to me about, he's like the wealthy, the people who are wise with their money, understand that you always buy at the dip. And he said in March, everybody who had like a poverty mindset, who was like, we got to hold on, they all pulled out of a lot of the market and like kind of held tight to what they had and got selfish with it, And he said the wise ones were the ones who said, no, like I'm going to keep this here. I know how this is going to go. I know how the stock market moves, and it's going to come back up eventually. And you've seen some people make stupid money off of COVID-19 because they said, look, even though it looks crazy, we're going to hold on to it for a little bit longer and ride it to go up. And I think that's kind of been a similar motto with our team is like, hey, even though everything around us has been looking insane, let's just hold tight, hold our ground. And like we've had to cancel, we've had to shut down. Like I've gotten COVID, we've had rain and it shut, like we've just had tons of stuff happen throughout the last 6 months, but it's like, we're just going to be consistent to how we can. We're going to hold tight. And it's cool. Like we just released like this conference we're putting on, and we can kind of see the upswing coming up, and we see tons of young people coming again, and we see some cool things on the horizon. And, I think it's a similar thing with any, with business or music, or it's like, there's always going to be those people who quit when it gets hard and quit when it hits the dip. And I think like resiliency says like, no, even though it's harder now, we're going to push, we're going to grind, so that when we come out of this, like we're going to still be standing, we're going to still be able to be used, and we're going to still see the fruit of our life, run for one while.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And one thing I really admire about your team, at least looking from a distance, is I feel like you have so many people just on board with the vision and mission. It's like you have a great team there, and B, it's like you guys are having so much fun. I think that is just so underrated, like, especially when it comes to, because you're grinding. And, I have no doubt that you and your team are grinding. You're working hard. You're spending the hours. But in the midst of that, you're laughing together. Like there's community that's flourishing. So how have you, like in 6 months, really, I mean, how have you built such a strong foundation of people around you that you guys are like, hey, we're here for this. We're bought into the vision, and we're having fun along with the process?
Yeah, I learned a really awesome lesson in the first week of this job. I had no one on my team, and I had all these meetings set up, like I was telling you earlier, kind of back to back to back. And I can remember I had this one meeting at 10 at a coffee shop and then one at 11:30 at the same coffee shop. And I meet with this kid, he's like 20 years old, and he's telling me like, my college just got shut down. I'm online, but all my friends are gone. Like, it's a lonely season. So like, yes, I'll serve. And he told me yes. Right.
Yeah.
And at 11:30, I have another meeting with a kid who had just moved here from Hawaii, knew nobody here whatsoever. And he was like, sure, like, I guess I'll do this. Like, I don't have any friends yet.
Yeah.
And it was crazy to watch those two in our first meeting, like connect. And now fast forward 7 months and they're literally roommates, best friends in the world, and like live life together so close. And I learned this lesson of like, if you want to see your team move together and have momentum and you want to see the pieces roll, I realized that when you can build strong community and strong friendships between the people on your team, it just helps so much more. And that became kind of our motto. Like, I live life really close with a lot of the guys we serve with. Like, we do coffee almost 3 times a week, and we'll do our Devos together. Like, we'll surf together, we'll skate together, we'll do all our things together. Because when I ask them to do something, or when it gets tough, or when, it gets to a grind season of ministry or work or whatever, they know that I have their best interests in mind and that my heart is for them because I've cared for them even when it wasn't for me or for them to like perform or to produce for our ministry. And what we've seen is like, I've kind of allowed one of our things is like our core values is everybody is creative. We all have something to bring to the table. And like in our meetings, I like leave space for the quirky and the weird and the creative to come out. And a lot of times it turns to them just dying, laughing, like talking about memes or whatever. But like what will come out of it is like, one, we're laughing together, we're having a good time. And then everybody feels that openness and that welcomeness to speak because there's no judgment. It's just like, no, we have, all of us have something to bring to the table. And it's created a really fun atmosphere between our team where like, every meeting people look forward to it. Like when we gather together, it's not just us here to work or to produce for a ministry, but it's here because my best friends in the world are here. And this is, my community. And it's cool because we've created kind of all these sub best friend groups that have come out of us starting this ministry. And it's just become so much fun. And we've seen like it trickle down to the next generation because there's juniors and seniors watching my 19, 20-year-olds like, and they're like, I want a part of that. Like, what are they doing? Like, why is their life that way? And they've started to kind of step up in leadership, and you just see that trickle effect of influence trickle down. But yeah, I mean, we have such a good time. The coolest group of young adults in the world, very like diverse in every aspect. Like we have skaters, we have surfers, and then we have absolute Star Wars nerds, and we have jock kids who still think they're in college playing football. Like, it's so much fun.
Yeah, I love what you said. Kind of, you create that space in a meeting because I think, especially as leaders, we have to be intentional about creating atmospheres for different things.
Totally.
And, I think a danger sometimes is when we're so focused on planning and, scheduling and making sure that everything is excellent, we don't leave any margin to like goof around and have fun. And if you don't leave margin for that, a lot of times it just doesn't happen. And sometimes I think we think it'll organically happen, but we do have to be intentional at times of creating a space to be able to be like, okay, everybody just take a breather. Let's laugh a little bit. Let's understand like we love each other, like understand that this is a fun thing that we're doing together. And then I think that creates momentum going forward. But I just love that about what you have going on in terms of, you guys just have fun. And so like as a leader, because I think sometimes the tightrope that leaders can walk on is you're friends with the people around you, obviously, but you still want their respect in a leadership format. Yeah. So how have you dealt with that in terms of like, okay, we're broing out, we're buddies. Okay, but now we're in a work meeting and we're trying to schedule something. So you need to like respect what's happening.
Totally. I was just going to speak to that actually, because I'm actually not even the oldest person on our team. I'm 23 and most of my team is in that 19 to 23 year old range. And for me, I've had to be very intentional about how I spend my time with them. And in the sense of like, I don't do a lot of the like after hang things. Like I don't like, when it comes to like, all the boys are going out, I've intentionally removed myself from some of that so that my voice carries weight when we're in meetings. And they, so there's been a lot of like practical things like that where like, like when they see me, it's usually either in a church atmosphere or I've invited them to come. A lot of times I'm not just like staying up till 3 a.m. with them playing video games all the time. But it's come from like when you have deep connection and deep relationship, and I've invested a lot. The reason I have the equity is like like I said, most of my week in the mornings is I have a different one-on-one with a different young adult on our team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, talk to me about the real things in your life. Like, how can I lead you? How can I pray for you? What's going on? And what happens is when we have those types of connections, when we're in a meeting and I go, all right, it's time to get to business. Like, let's get after this. Like they go, oh, it's Ben. Like we got to, and I want to make sure I carry, like you balance that tightrope of like, there's some authority here. Like God's placed me here. I have a mantle. I'm, a pastor on this staff, but at the same time, like, I think it can get flipped. People get too much in the authoritative, realm where they're all like, looking down at people. And I want to make sure I'm like that humble servant at the same time where I'm like,
totally.
Yeah, like, like I'll go like help you if you need a move, or I'll go help pick you up from the airport. But at the same time, like when we're here, like there is a respect because God's placed me in this position, but respect isn't just given, it has to be earned. And I feel like I've earned it through just equity in our lives and how we, they get to see me when I'm at church, and they get to see me when I'm at home, and they get to see me when we're surfing, and they get to see me when we're in a meeting, and they see the same Ben at all of those. And because of that, I think you just earn that authority there.
Yeah. I think that's crucial. Like you're consistent, but you can still have, you're obviously the same person. Cause I think some people would argue, cause if you look at it from like a parent standpoint, we all had the friends whose like parents tried to be everybody's best friend. And it was like, okay, yeah. You're not our best friends. But then on the other side of it, you had our friends whose parents were just like strict, authoritative, never showed any type of affection. And it's like, there's still the two sides, at least for leadership, that we can fall into a lot of times. But I think it's really good what you said of being consistent, because you could still have conversations. Like if I'm close with somebody, they're obviously going to see a more candid side of me than some random person that's walking on the street. But it's okay to have conversation with that candid person that respects you, to say, hey, just so you know, in these settings, I need you to set the tone and understand that the tone changes whenever we're stepping into like a service planning meeting or whenever we're talking about this. And as long as you have that respect, and as long as you're a consistent person, it doesn't mean you're fake. It just means that you are actively leading the synergy and the environment of a room.
Yeah. I mean, imagine like, if they see me on a stage preaching, or they travel with me somewhere and they see that version of Ben, but then I invite them to my home and I'm cursing and just being an idiot. Like they'd be like, wait, what? Like, why are you that way here? And for me, I've tried to, for as best as I can, like bring an authenticity to every arena of life, so that they know like, oh, like he's not just doing this to perform. Like this is out of the overflow of who he is. Like I want to be that. Like, why is he that way? And I feel like that's the best way to lead. Honestly, a pastor of mine up at the church we were both at, like lived that out so well. Like I got to live with him and see how he was with his kids and his family, but he was the same guy that when he was preaching on the stage. And for me, that was such an inspiration, because I'm like, man, that's it. Like that's how you get influence. That's how you lead at a high level.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so what, in your opinion, because your ministry right now is junior high and high school and young adults, all of them? Okay.
No, junior high school. Yeah.
Just junior high school. Okay. So, in your opinion, let's say, what do you think is this, because this is Gen Z we're talking about, right? Junior high still Gen Z?
Oh, yeah. They are.
Yeah. So,
still age 10.
What was that?
Age 10 is the cutoff.
Okay. So, we'll go there. So, in Gen Z, what do you think is their biggest strength, and what do you think is their biggest weakness in terms of, like, I mean, obviously there's going to be outliers, but what have you observed as a whole so far?
Yeah, that's great. I'll go with the strength first, because I like to lead with good things. The strength is, I think, the ability to adapt and overcome. I think more than ever, they're okay with not being comfortable. In the sense of like, you gotta imagine, like, even I was talking to a friend who's like 27, and like he didn't even have Instagram till he was a freshman in college.
Right.
Like that was, and like we've all grown up with it. Like, at least for me, it was like 6th grade, I think I got an Instagram, and then a lot of the kids I had it their entire life. Right. And then now there's TikTok and there's all these other platforms.
Yeah.
And I think the ability for them to like see an arena and figure out, how can I succeed in this area? Or see like a problem like COVID, how can we still produce in this area? Or see like, issues, and see new platforms and new things come, and be able to like figure it out fast and roll with it.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool. They are so creative. They love to, now more than ever, we don't like to just consume, but they can literally publish and create themselves. So like everybody has, like, I think whatever gifts God put inside of us, like there's an ability to put it out. There's a young man in our youth ministry who like was inspired on a Sunday night through a sermon and goes home that night and creates like a Snapchat prayer line and has 250 kids on the Snapchat prayer line that like posts like a prayer request, and he has all these other high schoolers like praying for it, right? So like I would never think of that, but like 17 and he goes like, there's a need, I have this platform, I'm gonna use this to, you know, impact the kingdom. And I see that stuff all the time, which I think is so cool. I think the weakness is man, I think we've numbed ourselves. This is what I keep going back to. I think there's a lack of empathy, and I'll kind of speak to it. I think like because we all consume so much negative, good, bad, in between content, that we don't feel it anymore, and therefore it's harder for us to make a real reaction or action because of it. We see a young man killed in the streets, and for a lot of us, it's horrible, but also like, I've seen that 5 times before.
Right.
Like the fact that that's like it's just another one. Oh, it's just another one. And I feel like there's going to have to be some people who say like, I got to either disconnect or I got to figure out how to feel the emotion of empathy again, so that I can actually enact change that will help this. Because I think a lot of what I see is like, they're just bombarded with everything from sex to to violence, to this, right? Which we all consume all the time, but we've stopped being aware of like what it's doing to our souls and what it's doing to our minds. And there's just this numbness I see where like all the time, like kids just kind of have this either blank look or they'll fall into that depression or that anxiety that's overwhelming because they're just numb. And I think, you know, we believe here that like the Spirit of God in any moment can redirect our path and can change our lives, which is what we're trying to do. But I think that's just going to be one area where I'm like, we're going to have to figure out how to feel empathy again, so that we can actually love people well, and we can actually forgive people and live out, you know, the way Jesus called us to live.
Yeah, that's good. I honestly I don't think that, because I think a lot of people try and demonize social media and the way that the internet age is going. But in my opinion, you know, it's not in nature bad. I think it just, I said this before, it enhances whatever state that you're in. So if you're a healthy person, right, if you're doing good, if like your ducks are in a row, like social media is kind of an outlet that's like, it's awesome. It's creative. It's fun. You get to connect with your friends. But, you know, if you're struggling with things, insecurity or, you know, temptations, then all of a sudden this world of social media and the internet is extremely dangerous for you. And so I don't think it's necessarily like, we shouldn't demonize it in a way, because it's not going to go anywhere. It's only going to get more in front of us. So I like what you said, like we have to figure out what to do with it now, because now it's here, now it's a reality, and we can't, you know, close our eyes and wish it away of like, oh, I wish, you know, the internet wasn't what it is. It is what it is. And so learning how to lead people through that. And it's the same exact thing, in my opinion, of like video games. Like 20 years ago, there were so many, you know, parents that were like, video games are, you know, they're terrible, like, you know, we'll limit it, but it's only growing. And so rather than wishing it away, rather than saying, oh, it's evil, don't even be a part of it, how do we lead people through it? I think is going to be huge for this generation.
I think there's so many cool things with it too, as well. Like
absolutely.
I love how it, like it's funny, like you can mention a meme in San Diego and I can be in Texas and say the same meme and everybody gets it. So there is this cool like community aspect of like, we're all connecting. And I'll shout out like Elijah Lamb, this kid on TikTok. I don't know if you've seen him before, but he's like 15 or 16. And he just has this like, in not a corny way, he just has amazing content that is like, it's usually like on leadership or, you know, getting yourself right, or maybe something to do with God. And it's just really great, positive content. And he's blown up on TikTok, but he uses his platform to like enhance people's lives.
Yeah, totally.
And it's in a way that's like digestible to all age groups and all demographics. And I think like there's going to have to be some key players, and maybe you're watching this right now, who, you know, like your platform needs to be used to build people up and needs to be used to make, you know, a good impact on people's lives. And I think as soon as people start to realize that, which I see day by day, I think it's going to be something that can be used to literally spread positivity and spread the word of God throughout this entire world, which is rad.
Cool. So we're going to pivot. Usually we do like a hot takes challenge, where I give you hot takes. We're going to camp on one hot take.
Okay.
and we're going to camp on relationships because what
Okay.
I love about you is you are in a dating relationship. And it's funny because any person that would come to me and say, hey, I want to date this girl, I want to date this guy, but they live, they don't live here. It's a long distance relationship. My advice, honestly, Canada would be upfront, like, hey, it's probably not going to work. Like it's
Yep.
probably not going to work for you. Like if you should probably are better finding somebody in your sphere because what I've seen is it doesn't work. However, you are a rare case because you could talk about your relationship and how, the progression of it, but it's a little bit different. So why don't you just go ahead into your dating relationship and how it all started and where you guys are at right now?
Yeah. The funny thing is, if anyone asked me the same thing, I'd tell them the exact same thing. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's so hard. But I think, yeah, I've been dating the same girl for almost 4 years, like
It's amazing.
3 years and 8 months. And that will come to a new season of engagement very soon here. And then
Ooh.
ultimately,
Ooh.
but like for us, I actually met her in person. Like I'm not like doing the online thing. We
Yeah, yeah,
dated in
yeah.
person for almost a year. So we had
Mhm.
like a foundation of like, this is how we communicate. This
Yep.
is, I think we're going to go towards this direction. And for me, it was one of those things where like, I had to make a choice. I knew she wanted to go back to college in California.
Mhm.
And I had to say like, man, like I genuinely love this girl and I knew this was the one for me. And I said like, even if it means a season of her going in, and I had to look at it as her growing, her going to the school she wants, her chasing her passions, her chasing the things God has for her. I can sacrifice seeing her only once a month for this season
Yeah.
if it means at the end of it we're going to come together and be better. So like for us, we both, when we started, and I say this to anybody going into a long distance relationship,
Mhm.
you must have an end goal of you being back together in person, or else good luck.
Yeah,
Like
that's
it's going
good.
to be tough. So for us, from the very beginning, we knew, okay, when we both graduate in 2 years from now, we know where we're going to be. We're going to be in person and we're going to get married and do our thing.
Mhm.
So it helped a lot. And honestly, like, and she'll probably be listening to this, but I actually enjoyed a lot of it. I think she would say the same thing too. Like, in the sense of like, I think more than I watched a lot of my friends date, like while we were
Yep.
in school, while we were learning, and it just threw them off of like a lot of the things I think they could have been working at and growing at. And for me, it was like, I had more time than my other friends who were dating to like, if I want to give 80 hours to this project, I can. If I want to work
Yeah.
overtime, I can. If
Totally.
and so like that was a really cool thing because I felt like I got to grow at a much faster pace because it was like I had that freedom. But at the
Mhm.
same time, man, I think we are so good at communicating because we had to do it with
Totally.
we didn't have the outing of like, just come here, like let me just give you a hug. Like we didn't
Yeah.
have that outing a
Yeah,
lot of the
you
time.
didn't.
Like it was like we had to sit and we had to face whatever we were going through on FaceTime on the phone and we had to work it out. And I think what it did is it taught us like, I know her love language and I know how she receives things. And I know probably better than I would have because we didn't have just like the cop out of like, let me just buy you ice cream real quick. Like that's some
Right,
fake,
yeah.
you know?
Give me a hug.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like that, we've been dating again in person for the last 6 months. And then, we're going to get married and move in together soon. It's going to be great.
That's awesome, man. And
Yeah.
I think it's so good too because I think, you know, talking about the benefit of you guys being apart because you were forced to grow individually. And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the biggest things for dating couples is they start acting like they're married before they're married. And
Sure.
I've talked with a number of different couples that like had issues, walking into a marriage and thought that okay, once we're married, this is going to eliminate the problems. When in reality, it's really if you have problems, they have problems. You get married, we're bringing in double the baggage into whatever it is,
Yeah.
and so it's cool to be able to see that your perspective is you have an obligation as a single person to make sure that you are ready and fit to whenever you are getting married to be able to
Mhm.
walk into that marriage. And of course, we're all human. Of course, like we're dealing with things all the time and we're not perfect, but the idea is to take steps towards that and not
That's
rely on your partner, not rely on your dating
Yeah.
partner to fix what's going on inside of you because they never will. It's your issue, it's your problem that you need to really deal with and take to God.
Yeah. And for us, like we both do very different things. Like
Yeah.
I lead in church, and right now she works for a private designer in Los Angeles. So like we're in two different worlds. But what was cool about that season is it did allow us to learn how to like communicate to each other's worlds and bridge that gap. Because like I didn't force her into my box and she didn't force me into her box. We've learned to like fully form our own two careers and our own two passions. And then we just come together and we communicate about how it's going and we support each other. You know, she'll serve at our youth ministry and I'll help her make graphics, whatever I can if she ever needs it. Like I'm just not very good at it. But like we kind of have like this really cool balance and I love it. Like for me, and that's what I'm saying. Like you got to find like what has God designed for your relationship? You know what I mean? Like you and Adrian, you guys have your thing that works really well. And for us, like that's what we found is like it's cool because we're in different worlds, but at the same time, I've learned a lot how to reach people in her world and how to have friends in her world, and same vice versa, which I think is like the beautiful part. That's what I love about it is like we're just doing two different things and it's super fun.
Yeah, that's cool. And for you, how has that been supporting each other in different worlds? You know, because you know, I think sometimes a stigma can be if I'm called to ministry, like my spouse has to be called to ministry, and it's awesome if that's the case. You know, if you guys are both called to that, but I think, of course, God's going to call people in different worlds. You know, I know a couple different couples where someone's in ministry, the other person's in the marketplace. And so how do you guys find that you best like support each other and what do you do? Because if you're in a different world, you really don't know, like you can't fully understand what they go through and what they're dealing with. So how have you found that you guys do that in supporting each other through different areas?
Yeah, I think the coolest thing for us is, and this is not for everybody, but my kind of journey to finding ministry wasn't necessarily something I knew I wanted to do since I was 5 years old. It's actually been within the last 3 to 4 years that I've really determined this is my world. But before that, like I was just like all things music and all things culture. And that was like what I had passion. That's what I studied. That's what I love to watch. That's what I love to consume. That's what all my friends did that. So the cool thing is like, even though I'm in the world I'm in now, like her friend group that she has become now my friend group, and none of them do anything in church. And for me, it's like the most refreshing thing to like, when we hang out with her friends, it's like, they're talking about music and they're talking about things that are totally different. And it's cool because she's like made this awesome bridge from me to her friend group where like, they don't look at me weird because I'm the pastor. They don't look at me like I'm but like, they just know me as Ben. Right. And they just know me as who I am. And for me, it's really helped shape like how I evangelize and how I talk to people who aren't in the church world. And it's kept me in touch with, I would say, like the reality of what's going on in the world because of it. And I love like hearing her perspective on things because she goes to work and no one in her building is believers. I come to work and everybody works for a church. Totally. So like for her, like her conversations with her friends and the people she works with are just completely different. And for me, it's kept our relationship like really fresh because there's always this dynamic that's fun to talk about. And I can give her insight into like, hey, how would you like talk to this friend about this issue? They brought this up. Like, what would and I can kind of help pastor her and coach her through that. I'm not her pastor, but like I can help that. She's Brooke's my pastor. Are you kidding?
Exactly.
And vice versa. So like if there's like a video we're putting out or content we're putting out, I love to get her perspective on it because she's not just judging in the church world. She's judging in Hollywood. Like she's judging on like, what is everybody doing? What's cool right now? What's moving? And there's tons of little ties like that just make it super fun. But I think at the end of the day, like we've both decided our lives are going to be centered on Jesus, like whether we're together or not, like at all times. So that's kind of always the connection piece. And then at the end of the day, like, I mean, I'm not even married yet. Like, you could speak to this a lot, but like, we're still learning so much about what it means to serve each other and to live close lives and to mess up and to screw up and to have grace and forgiveness, all those types of things. But I'm excited for it, man. It's super fun.
Yeah, that's cool. And I mean, you're always growing. You're always learning. Me and Adrian went out with friends of ours last night, and they are married for less times than me. I mean, me and Adrian have only been married for 4 years. So, but they're talking to us about an issue, and they're like, "Okay, what do you, basically not how do we solve this, but like looking at us with those eyes of like, what do we do?" And me and Adrian were like, I don't know. It happens to us too, like, so it's always just like being vulnerable and willing to grow together. And that's the thing, like you'll never arrive, but you can always continue to grow together. And so, I love that about your guys' relationship. I think it's just, again, I think what I love about your world, your ministry, your relationships, kind of who you are as a person is I feel like everything that you do revolves around levity and it's fun and people are having a good time. And I just really respect that. So in terms of your ministry, at Daybreak Youth, what is coming up that you guys are really excited for?
Yeah, a couple things. We're putting out our first record, which is gonna be fun. We've been up in the studio writing music, and it's just so fun. It sounds like now, and the team's super talented. And then, quick plug: in May, we're putting on our first future conference ever.
So
This is
cool.
for youth and young adults. And it's cool. We're really trying to, like, the theme of this conference, the heart behind it that I had was like, let's not force people into the church world. Let's merge culture and let's merge church and try and bridge this gap. So like our Saturday is everything but, in a sense, church voices. So like our Saturday morning session is like a band, Olympic swimmer, a pro skater,
So
a designer. And the idea is, like, I think a lot of people need to see people who maybe aren't like on stage preaching a message, but still have faith.
yes.
We have a lot of kids who surf, and I know it's going to be impactful when they see a pro surfer get up there and talk about how faith's impacted their walk and their journey and their competitiveness and all that kind of thing. So like, we're really trying to aim on like, how do we like empower young people to not necessarily like drop their giftings to go to church, but how do we bring their giftings into the church?
Yeah, 100%.
And that's that morning. And then we're doing surf camps and skate camps and all kind of thing. And then we got Pastor Tim Somers from Elevation coming out and preaching, and a ton of other amazing guests, some musical guests, both nights, just concerts. So it's just gonna be a good time. May 14th and 15th. We're stoked for it. It's the first one we're doing, so we'll see how it goes. But Spence, you better come hang. It's gonna be fun.
I think honestly, any excuse to go down to San Diego. I mean, actually, it is sunny right now. I'm not gonna lie here, but any excuse to get into some heat is good for me. But we're kind of coming up on our time here, but I just want to say thanks so much for coming onto the podcast. We'll link down below if you're watching on Apple or Spotify or YouTube. We'll link the conference link so they can sign up for the conference. We'll also link kind of Daybreak's page, your page, so you guys can check out. But seriously, check it out. I mean, I think it's one of my favorite follows because it is just like, it's fun. Like, I love seeing posts about what you guys are doing. So again, thank you so much for coming on to The Future Is Now. I'm really honored that you came on and talked with me today.
Dude, thanks for having me. Love you, bro. You're the best.
For sure.